Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Black Doctors Talk podcast. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Holmes, and member of the Black Doctoral Network. Well, again, I did not come to disappoint you. I have another guest who is simply amazing. Today, I am joined by Dr. Nathan Rogers. He's the managing consultant for Empowered to Learn LLC, where he conducts speaking engagements and delivers workshops in this area of informal learning. We're going to dive really deep into some informal learning today, guys. Dr. Rogers serves as a senior learning consultant with NTT NATA, and a consultant for the FBI's Office of Private Sector in Washington, D.C. So first of all, what that means is this man has some clearances, all right? So you don't want to mess with him. He is also an adjunct professor, just another thing that this guy is doing, for the American Intercontinental University, where he teaches graduate courses in education. He has a broad professional experience in corporate business management, college education, nonprofit management, technology, and entrepreneurial ventures. As the author of Unstructured, The Power of Informal Learning, Dr. Rogers promotes conversations around how we educate in our K-12, higher ed, and workforce development systems, particularly in our underserved communities. His mission is to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion by empowering individuals to take control of their learning through a practice and a powerful framework of informal learning. Dr. Rogers is a decorated Air Force veteran. We thank him for his service, who now serves on the board of directors for Physicians Assistants of Color, ThePAC, with the purpose of increasing the medical inclusion of people of color. If you haven't already taken note, guys, this is going to be a great conversation. I want to thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Rogers, and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Dr. Holmes. I'm excited to get this conversation going.
Yeah, this is going to be good, guys. This guy, as you can see, Dr. Rogers has a lengthy history and experience in a lot of different things, but we're going to focus this thing. So he's going to drop some nuggets on you guys. So before he starts talking to you about Dr. Rogers, we're going to go back a little bit, just a little bit. And I want you to talk to us a little bit about young Nathan. Who was he?
Oh, young Nathan. Well, young Nathan was this Texas country boy who just loved hunting, fishing, and all the things that people might typically expect out of a Texan. It was a good childhood growing up, and of course, we all find our points of struggle, which we learn how to overcome. But, I grew up, eventually joined the Air Force, finished college, and that took me into Big Nathan, the adult.
Well, here's my first question. Because I always wonder when we have these individuals in academics, right, in scholarship, we have some who enter into armed forces first. So what was your purpose, your zeal for joining the Air Force?
Well, when I first thought about the Air Force, I think I had finished a 2-year college, Glenn College, and I still wasn't sure about my direction.
Yeah.
And a buddy of mine was in the Navy, and he was back in town and telling me about his world adventures, and I started daydreaming. Next thing I knew, I had signed up in the Air Force, and I was gone.
Yeah, I mean, it's just always interesting. And of course, I went to school with people who were in the ROTC in college. And so I knew nothing about this. So that always amazed me because I'm like, how did you hear about this program in college? I thought people just come to college to go to class and have fun, and they were waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and doing PT. And so, I find that some people either they have it in their family or like you, their friends that tell them about it. And when they're in that phase of life, when they're trying to figure it out, it's a great way to kind of check out and get engaged, travel the world, meet new people. So number one thing is, what did you take away from that time while you were in the Air Force?
I think the greatest takeaway for me with the Air Force was taking ownership of your actions and commitment to things, because it gave you structure. And, like commanders always said, there are no such thing as excuses, just results.
Yeah. And as a young person, for a lot of people, that discipline is what you need. We, like you said, we have that pie in the sky kind of mentality. We're just dreaming about all the things that we're going to do, but we have no structure. We don't create strategy. We have no plan of action. And then so I could definitely see how the military, and I come from two brothers who serve, I understand that structure. They're both very structured to this day, and they're trying to get me there. But I'm like, listen, that wasn't my path. Was not my path at all. So you get out of the service, and then you decide to do what?
Well, I have to kind of preface this with saying that while I was in the service, I completed my undergraduate degree. And I had plans of getting out and starting in the profession as a corporate accountant. And so after leaving, I went to Seattle, where I did take a position as a corporate accountant. And that kind of got the ball rolling on the career, but I did not stay with accounting permanently.
So you're working, you have the undergraduate degree, life continues, and at some point, you say to yourself, the doctorate is an option. Now, I want you to talk me through what led you there, because sometimes people feel backed up against the wall to do it. Sometimes somebody just drops a seed in their lap, and it births this idea of being a doctor. So how did you lead, or how did you get to that point in your life where you said, I'm going to get this degree?
Well, I think in the back of my mind, I had this dream to accomplish that. But to be honest with you, I didn't think it was attainable.
Yeah.
And I didn't think it was obtainable because when I was in junior high, I had issues with math. Not that I didn't have the capability. I was just unfortunate to have an educator who thought that the class hour was there for, the comedy hour. Yeah. And being with, in a situation where my parents couldn't really give me the support I needed in terms of helping or providing the resources to close that gap, it caused a few years of trying to close that gap and figure it out.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. And this is part of the work that I do about creating confidence, but also ensuring that every student has that equitable opportunity to learn, even if the situation at home doesn't foster that level of achievement. We want to make sure that when students walk in buildings, number one, they receive quality instruction. Number two, they can access it. And two, they're able to demonstrate that with confidence over time. So we don't have that gap, right? And so you thought about it. You said it wasn't attainable. I thought about it. I was like, there's no way I'm getting it. Like, I don't have the money to buy a pair of shoes. But life saw fit to give you the opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And I think the Air Force played a major part in that confidence. When I finished the undergraduate work, I had a little bit of experience with computers, and I ended up taking a role for the Air Force, security, police, and law enforcement, where I was responsible for implementing computer operations. And this was early 90s when they were just deploying PCs. And as you recall, back then, it was not pull a PC out of the box, plug and play.
Yes.
I didn't know this at the time. And so I found myself in a situation where I had to not only deploy these things, I had to build training. I had to partition hard disk drives. I had to implement software from 23rd Air Force. And to be honest with you, I almost freaked out to the point I was like, I am setting myself up for a disaster. So it was a very frightening experience, but I got through it.
So is that when you got involved with the technology? Is that what led you to get your MBA in technology?
Yes, that was part of it as well. And it was also the thing in the Air Force that gave me the passion for educating.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I had to build training, and I didn't know what I was doing really at the time. I was winging it.
Yeah.
But it struck an interest, a very deep interest after that.
So then you decide the doctorate, and you get the doctorate in education with a specialization in instructional design for online learning. So it kind of still all goes together with what you had already been doing.
Right, absolutely, because my master's was in adult education and training. Yeah. And so I wanted to complete the other side of that, to get the instructional design, for online learning, because technology is always integrated into this. And I thought it would be really beneficial. And so that's how I got on that track. But I finally got to the point with the confidence that, after, the master's program, I had built a lot of confidence at that point.
Yeah.
And over the years, I learned myself before I had a name for it of what informal learning really was. And it continued to grow through the Air Force and having to learn things very quickly and fast without any assistance, so.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that doctoral journey. How how would you describe it? You can give the highs, the lows, whatever you want to share about that.
Okay. Overall, I thought it was a very rewarding experience. At the beginning, it was very frightening because there was so much to learn, just about process,
Yes.
and working with these committees. And I was thinking to myself, oh God, I'm doing this thing, and now I'm going to have this committee of 3 PhDs who are going to be just grilling me over everything,
Yeah.
But I was really fortunate that I had a chair who really saw my potential, who really worked with me, and just was really inspiring in the things that I did in the program.
Yeah.
And so having someone like that and to allow you to focus and say to you, don't worry about the rest of the committee. We'll fight battles when we have those battles, and we'll fight those battles where we really need to.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super important. And we've talked about that on the podcast as well, because having a chair that believes in you makes the biggest difference, because they will advocate for you, like you said, against the other committee members, if that happens to present itself. But when you have somebody who doesn't believe in you, who's pushing back on your work, that makes your journey very, very challenging, almost to the point that's when many people give up, because they get tired of the fight, the push and pull, that it's like, is it even worth it at this point?
Absolutely, because the dynamics sometimes can be that of the political environment, and there are the egos that sometimes come into play on those committees.
Yes.
And you're there stuck in the middle. Well, what do I do in the process here?
Yeah. Yeah. And then they have these relationships that you are unaware of. And so sometimes the battle is not about you at all. They've been confronting each other for years. And so you just happen to be watching these adults go at it over your research. It's like, why?
Exactly. I experienced that. And but I took the vein of, what? I've got a mission. I'm on a mission here. And I want to get through this, but I didn't want to do it just to be doing it. I wanted meaning in what I was doing.
Yes.
Because I took my experience in education and through the Air Force, and I want to understand this. What do you do when you don't have a framework to help yourself?
Yeah.
That was my North Star throughout the program, and it remains that today. That's why I am such an evangelist for providing people a framework that's underpinned by informal learning. A lot of people hear that term, and it is so nebulous to people.
Yeah.
So I did things like I built an original model around that. I built workshop on that, and so it's something that I'm really focused on doing.
I want you to talk a little bit more about that for those that don't know what it is, because this was your research, right? You were deeply embedded in this work. So talk a little bit about what it was that you were researching.
Okay, so my research was a case study, and I was focused on instructional designers and how they leverage informal learning and operationalize that within organizations. And so during my research, one of my key questions that I asked participants is about how did they define informal learning? What does that really mean to them, right? And you'd get a broad set of responses, such as it's unstructured, it just happens naturally. It's bringing other people into the conversation. So there was a lot of different definitions about that. But past the research, one of the things that I realized, I had almost this epiphany at the end of the research, thinking about my own career as an instructional designer. And I asked myself the question, well, what makes us so successful? And it dawned on me, because We go into organizations, we have no knowledge of some of the things that we do for them until we're educated by their subject matter experts. But we have become extremely proficient at pulling information from subject matter experts, from other resources, books and technology, pulling those things in. And I ask myself, well, why are we not teaching other people to do what we do, since we're so successful and dependent upon informal learning?
Yeah, that's a great topic that you're looking at. And I love the fact you're looking at it from this organizational standpoint. I think many organizations don't focus on the development of their staff, their employees, and the way they receive information or how they gain knowledge. They just think, oh, well, here's the task, somehow get it done.
Exactly. They will roll out training, push things out. And those things usually have more of a benefit for them, like compliance training, for example.
Yes,
But
yes.
so many people learn things on their own because they know where their personal skill gaps are, and they have to find a way to address it.
And so you take this, and so now this is just not something that you research. This has become a life's work.
Oh, it's a life work. It's a business.
Yeah.
I have created workshops around this. In fact, I will be doing a workshop at Howard University for the faculty there. They have a Howard Middle School of Math and Science on campus there. And so I'm evangelizing this. I'm taking this everywhere. Every time I can have a conversation about informal learning and frame it to where people can really see the practicality of it, that's what I'm going to do.
I love that you use the word evangelizer, which means you're just spreading the good news about informal learning.
Just like the gospel.
I love that. I love that. And so you're doing this through your own LLC, but you're still working on the side. So you're like wearing multiple hats.
I am wearing multiple hats. When I take off my FBI contractor hat, I put on my Empowered to Learn hat. And while I'm doing that, I put on my professor hat to teach three graduate classes.
Did y'all hear all of that? I mean, goodness, that's a lot.
And add the board of directors on top.
Yeah, you have a lot going on. So now let's talk about as a professor, because I think this is important. What experiences are you hoping your students gain when they're in your class?
Okay. Again, I kind of take it back to self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel dependent on me. I want them to see me as a resource. I want to provide that environment where it challenges them to think. Let's have a conversation. I don't want to give the answers. I want to have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
And let you start developing based on what we're discussing in the classroom, but not make it, every session be a total, listen to me. I am the purveyor of all knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe we learn as effective that way.
Yeah. Now, do you find that your students come to your class uncomfortable with that experience because it's not what they're used to when they come through their traditional schooling experience?
Well, I'm teaching online, but the same thing happens. Some of them are, some are not, but they eventually get used to it. I have sessions where we talk, but it's more of a challenging on the topic of discussion because I want to pull things from them based on what they understand.
Yeah. I just find I'm in K-12. That is my structured work right now. And we have been so conditioned to think what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
And when we give students an opportunity to think freely, to express themselves, to analyze, or to do a deeper dive into a text or a conversation, they feel so uncomfortable, almost fearful, because they think what they are going to say is incorrect.
Incorrect.
And there is no right or wrong. I want you to express yourself. I want you to think about the conversation, the realm of the framework that we're using, and then in context, provide a response.
Exactly. And that is one of the reasons I really focus on looking at the K-12 system in particular, and having this conversation with educators, about let's add more of informal learning to the curriculum so that students have the opportunity to not have just you as a resource, but they learn how to integrate the technology, how to integrate their classmates, and decide what my personal learning environment looks like.
Yeah. The other thing is, one of the things you focus on are those in underserved communities.
Yes.
And so when we talk about students having voice in those systems, I think we can't overlook the fact that many times their voice is not valued because those who are in certain positions don't think they can contribute to the conversation.
You're absolutely right, Dr. Holmes. And that's why I always say there can be no diversity, equity, and inclusion if we are not empowering the learner.
Yes.
Because when you empower that learner based on, for example, the frameworks that I'm putting out there, they become the center.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are saying, listen, I don't have a schema for this. This is what I need from you. They're taking control.
How do we, because we are dealing with long-standing systems of learning.
Yes.
That it's going to take time to break down those walls. How do we open people up to seeing the new opportunities that are available for all students?
That's a terrific observation, and I look at it as, I know this isn't an overnight thing, but what I'm looking to do is get that conversation not only going, but find ways to expand it.
Yeah.
How do you get that capacity to expand that conversation? Because I am seeing some educators who are understanding and seeing that I can't be everything to every learner.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's beautiful because the knowledge that you come with and the positions that you have, you're able to have impact in a lot of different arenas. Higher ed, through your empowered to learn, you can be in K-12, right? And then you're on the FBI side in the private sector in DC. So I think you come with a wealth of knowledge in many arenas to impact a lot of different people. Is that sometimes stressful?
Actually, no. Actually, for me, it's exciting because I see the opportunities, I see the need. And another example of that you just gave, let's add workforce development to that. Yeah. We are in a time where technology is the driver in everything we do.
Yeah.
And the shelf life of what we know changes. It has a shelf life of about 3 years.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's so important that we start taking, especially K-12, taking a look at that framework that we're using now and say, how do we start educating them to educate themselves?
Yeah. You got to think about it. These kids come with a lot of knowledge that we didn't teach them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They have it at their fingertips. And so they're teaching teachers the world that currently exists, because sometimes teachers are living in the world 10 to 15 years behind. And so, like you just said, work looks different, and how we work now is totally different. And so are we preparing students for the world that they will live in the next 30 to 40 years?
And you're already seeing a lot of that with employers. You can see it in the ads that they place. They're looking for people who have informal learning skills, who can educate themselves on the job.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how we grew up, most of us.
Yeah. I see a lot of positions and embedded in that description. It says someone with an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes, exactly. And so we know that this is the way the world is changing.
Yeah.
And it was, and the pandemic, that alone is a topic of a whole different discussion, but it did expose in the educational systems where a lot of weaknesses are. And it's not that we didn't know that some of those already existed, but it made it raw to the world. Yeah. I had a mother in North Carolina who said to me, well, my son, when they went to online, he failed every class. And I asked, how could you fail every class? He goes, Mom, there was nobody standing in front of me telling me what I needed to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Or if I didn't understand something, there was nobody, I didn't know what to do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I said, wow.
And the thing is, what they're waiting for is before they even put in an answer, they're waiting for somebody to tell them, oh yeah, that's right, you can go ahead and keep moving.
Exactly.
They did not have that validation. And for many students, that stifled their learning because they were too afraid to trust their own mind. And that is scary.
It's very scary. And those kinds of things can have a long-lasting impact on especially on children, because then they lose their confidence.
Yes.
They feel that I can be successful. And what I'm saying is, yes, you can.
Yeah.
But we as educators, trainers, we have to give them a framework like another tool. And I'm not saying that informal learning is the only tool, but what I do know is it is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
And I want to take the abstract view away from that.
Mm.
You know, I want to use, the model that I created. This is graphic, and that illustrates how you can build your personal learning environment, how that plays with the formal learning system. But at the center of that model is the learner. And right beneath that person is the word intentionality.
Wow. Oh, that's one of my favorite words right now.
It's a good word.
I love that word. I say that all the time. That and strategic.
Yes. Because that is a part of building your personal learning environment. It's about the strategy.
Yeah. Let's go back to the doctorate, just briefly.
Sure.
Who was part of your support system to help you get through the process besides your committee?
I think my family, my friends, everyone was so supportive because, as you probably know, when you start a doctoral program, life as it existed before, it is not the same. All of those spontaneous events, birthdays and parties that you used to do.
Yeah.
Well, that goes on the park side of everything, right? But there were times where I thought to myself, because I hadn't seen people in so long, my friends, I thought they're just going to just totally abandon me.
Yeah.
But you know what? They always said, you know what? Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Because we're going to be here.
Yeah.
So that really did help.
They understand.
They understood. And
I always tell people, if I'm coming, rest assured I'm coming with a laptop. I cannot come without a computer.
And it's so funny. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I had a friend who was getting married in North Carolina, and I was in the last course of my doctoral program before going into dissertation mode. And it was a second statistics course. And I had to do my final exam, and I go there with my laptop.
Yeah.
And he had this basement office, and everybody was there after the wedding, and I could hear all the party going on and everything. And I'm sitting here trying to do this exam and get it submitted and thinking, geez, I can't wait to finish this and get out there, But that was just the way life was, and everybody understood that.
Yeah.
And they made sure I had what I needed to be uninterrupted and just let me do my thing until I was ready to join.
Yeah. Listen, I definitely, I've missed many of birthday parties. I've missed a lot of things. But I think people need to understand, when you decide to make the decision, sacrifice is a part of it.
It is a part. And I remember one professor saying once, like when you join a doctoral program, they say some of you are going to lose spouses or significant others.
Yeah.
Some of you are going to lose friends. But just know from the beginning that this is a commitment.
Yes.
And you must be ready for that.
Yeah. And I think what makes many people uncomfortable is a commitment to you. It's a selfish decision.
Yes.
Be okay with that. I mean, I have small children. Well, I had them along the way and was married. And so it was hard to pull myself away from my children and lock myself in my office for hours or sometimes all night. So once I put them to bed, I was up all night writing and reading until 6 o'clock in the morning until they woke up. But I understood what the end goal was.
Yes.
And my support system did too. And so they advocated for that. And like you said, they will hold you accountable. It's like, hey, what are you doing? You should be reading. You should be writing.
Right.
You should be studying. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'll let me go. Let me ask you this. When this is all said and done, what do you want your legacy to be?
If I can use my research and my work that I'm currently doing around informal learning and empowerment, I like to think of it not as informal learning, but empowering people to take control of their learning. If I can do that and help people to achieve their own career dreams or entrepreneurialism by using that, I think that will be my legacy.
So what did your dissertation birth the book?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, yes. Actually, yes. The dissertation did birth the book in a way. And it's really interesting and it's funny because my publisher, Dr. Sean Richmond, when I approached her with the idea, and we've gone back for a few years as friends, she said, you know what? She says, actually, that's a great idea. But she said, but listen, boo-boo. She goes, I know you love your research, but nobody wants to read your research. I need you to be able to write this in a way that's practical, that people will understand, not the scholarly language. They need to, when they pick up this book, they need to be able to say, I get this. I want to do this.
Yeah.
And it horrified me, to be honest with you. Initially, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to simplify this to a point where, because the other thing she said was like, this book for that purpose cannot be more than 127 pages, because we live in a society where people want instantaneous things, and you have got to grab their attention in chapter 1.
Yep.
And you've got to maintain and hold that. And I was like shocked myself that when it started getting down and people started reading it, I had people coming back and leaving me notes saying, wow, this was me. And it resonated with my own life. And now somebody's actually talking about it out loud, but giving me a framework that I can really honestly relate to and put into practice.
And I love that. So a lot of us who are in academia or in scholarship, when we produce writings or research, the only other people reading it are people like us.
Exactly.
So we read each other's stuff, but when we really want to create impact, we have to find a way to take that same knowledge and give it to the everyday average community so they can make sense of it. I am a big proponent of creating a space between actual academics and actual practical knowledge and behaviors.
Yes.
I think that's where the change happens. And so I'm glad that you decided to do that. I'm glad that she pushed you in that direction. Although I'm thinking, I know you were thinking, I just spent 180, 200 pages on a dissertation. You want me to simplify it? Like, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I had a lot of great editors in that process, and after I did a few chapters and submitted to her, I said, "How am I doing on keeping this as close to non-technical?" She goes, "You're doing really well with that. You only did it a couple of times, but where you did it, it was absolutely necessary, and that's what I'm talking about."
Yeah. Perfect way to frame that. I love. Yes. Some things you can't simplify. I was going to say something else, but you can't simplify. You can't put it in a very regular type language. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Right? And specifically, when I was in the book on one chapter talking about how we learn, you talk about our mind, psychology and the brain, that everything in our rational world is built on a schema that recognizes things, right? And so using that terminology around that topic, she goes, yeah, you did it there, but I see where it's really important to do it.
Is there anything you wish you would have known earlier in your career?
Yes, this. Somebody had given me a framework to say, listen, and I know you've heard this before, and I use the math example a lot because it's the one that everybody can relate to most. It's like, I studied all night for that math test and I still failed. And what I learned through informal learning and the process of learning is you didn't build the adequate schema in your mind to understand that quadratic equation that you were trying to solve. You had bits and pieces. And when you build a complete schema in your mind about a certain thing, it is there.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. It's just like reading heavy academic language in a research article. It's like, I've read this thing 10 times and I still don't know what it's talking about. And I'm sleepy at this point, so I'm going to bed.
I can relate.
Yeah. It's just like, I have no frame for it. It is foreign to me. Now, you are a member of this organization, the Black Doctoral Network, and it's individuals that like you that we enjoy having being a part of this, people who are out here doing the work, connecting their research into everyday learning, practice, change, impact, experiences for other people. Talk a little bit about your experience with us and what you're looking forward in the future as you continue to be a member of the organization.
One of the things that I'm really looking forward to doing is networking with people with like interest, especially in the K-12 systems, and talk about, things like informal learning and other things, and people who are doing research. Where is there like synergy for connecting with others to jointly do research, things like that. And I accidentally stumbled upon the Black Doctoral Network.
Wow.
And I was looking for like Black educational organizations in DC. And that one came up in the list. And I said, seems most appropriate. So I went to the link and started going through everything on that page. I was just like gobbling it down. And I said, yes, this is the one. This is the one. Yeah. So I joined it. I think it was like in November. And shortly after, I learned that they had this conference in Atlanta. And I was like, oh, it was too late. I couldn't, it was closed. It's like, oh my goodness. But I will be joining that the next go around.
Yeah. Please join the next conference. The conference experience is a few words. You really can't describe it. It's a place of safety. It's a place of home. It's a place where your work is valued. It's a place where you are celebrated. And it's a place that will challenge you to be even greater. You're going to meet some amazing people. I meet amazing people just from doing this podcast that are major contributors to society, major contributors to research and scholarship, and major contributors to impacting change in Black and brown and underserved communities. So I look forward to sharing more with you. I look forward to hearing you speak at the conferences and sharing your work and all the great things that you're going to do in the future. This is an exciting time for you. And I'm just glad we kind of caught you on this upswing. Now, FBI, you may have to let him go soon, people. He may not manage all this. Empowered to Learn is on the way. And I'm excited too, because you are wanting to support my passion, which is K-12 education. I'm passionate about higher ed, but we will never have a higher ed if we don't have an effective K-12.
I could not agree more. And that is exactly why I'm so focused on that area, because we have to start them young to get that mentality of, I can take control of my learning. I know when I need you. I know how to integrate you into my personal learning world.
Most definitely. Well, Dr. Rogers, I really appreciate you joining me today. This has been a great conversation. You have great energy, you have great passion, and you are doing some great work. So will you go ahead and tell our viewers and our listeners where they can go to learn more about the work that you're doing?
Sure. And Dr. Holmes, thank you for inviting me to join you on this podcast, because I do listen to the podcast you put out there, and it's some great conversations, and I love watching them. But you can contact me at empoweredtolearn.net. Or you could also get a hold of me through goshenpublishers.com. And my book entitled Unstructured, The Power of Informal Learning is also on Amazon and Goshen Publishers, or at my own site, empoweredtolearn.net.
Well, listen, guys, he's giving you all the information and tools that you need to access him. So go and do so. You can also connect with him on LinkedIn. I've done so. He's my new connection. He's my new friend. So I would love for you to do that. Now, while you're connecting with Dr. Rogers, please also stay connected to the Black Doctoral Network on all of our social media channels as well. We want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great conversation. I know I did not disappoint you. And remember, I will be back next week with another amazing guest. Until then, like I always say, guys, be safe, be blessed, and don't forget to tell a friend about BDN. We'll see you next time, guys.